your PS2 guy. Yeah, your PS2 guy.
Moving into the middle of March, the PS2 library really started to flex its muscle. This week, we're looking at March 15th through March 21st. This is a week defined by one of the greatest M-rated debuts in gaming history and a legendary RPG that pushed the hardware to its absolute limit. Hi everyone, I'm Dan Gnadt, your PS2 guy, and welcome back to This Week in PS2 History. We're diving into the week of March 15th through the 21st. This specific week in the past gave us two of the most technically impressive games ever to grace the console. One that redefined action games forever, and one that showed just how beautiful a PS2 RPG could look. Let's get into the highlights. First up, we have to talk about a game that changed the landscape of action gaming forever. On March 22nd, 2005, 21 years ago this week, God of War slashed its way onto the PlayStation 2. Developed by Santa Monica Studio, this was the world's introduction to Kratos. At a time when the PS2 was starting to show its age, God of War looked like it was running on next-generation hardware. Between the massive scale of the Hydra boss fight and the seamless cinematic transitions, it was a technical masterpiece. It proved that the PS2 still had plenty of life left and launched one of Sony's most iconic franchises of all times. Next, we're going to look at a controversial but massive release. While it hit Japan earlier in the month, the week of March 17th often marks the lead up to the Western impact of Final Fantasy X-2. Released in 2003, this was the first ever direct sequel in Final Fantasy history. It swapped the somber tone of the original Final Fantasy X for a high-energy, Charlie's Angels-inspired adventure. While the tone was different, many fans argue that its system was actually one of the best iterations of the job system in the entire series. Whether you love the J-pop intro or not, you can't deny the impact Yuna's return had on the PS2 era. And now for racing fans out there, March 17th, 2005 saw the release of Konami's Enthusia Professional Racing. Coming out just weeks after Gran Turismo 4, Enthusia has often been overlooked. But it was a serious simulation. It featured a unique visual gravity system that tried to communicate the G-forces of the car to the player through the user interface. It wasn't as flashy as Gran Turismo 4, but its physics were arguably more realistic. If you're a sim racing purist, this is a title you'll definitely need to have in your collection. It's incredible to think that in the same week we got the brutal violence of God of War and the technical precision of Enthusia. The PS2 library really had something for everyone. I have to ask, where do you stand on Final Fantasy X-2? Did you love the new direction, or did you prefer the original Final Fantasy X? Let me know your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you next week as we close out the month of March. Thanks again for joining me. I'm Dan Gnadt, your PS2 guy. Stay retro.
Midnight strikes